She said to stop laughing and get out of her way, her voice steady despite the chorus of snickers from the Special Operations team members. The commander moved forward, about to dismiss her from the training area. Then she unfolded the results. Paper. The room fell silent as the senior officer's eyes widened. The screen behind him flashed with her perfect scores, better than any special ops team had achieved in 15 years. Maya Chen stood perfectly still in the center of the Fort Blackwood training compound. At 5 feet 7 inches with her dark hair pulled back. In a regulation bun, nothing about her physical appearance suggested extraordinary capabilities. Her standard issue fatigues hung slightly loose on her athletic frame, and her boots showed the same wear as any other soldier's. But her eyes, deep brown and unnervingly calm, revealed a focus that most career military personnel never developed. Captain Reynolds muttered that this had to be a mistake, his weathered face flushing red as he scrolled through the test results again. Nobody from basic training scored this high, not possible. Maya remained silent, hands clasped behind her. Back, expression neutral. She had learned long ago that defending herself only invited more ridicule. The 28-year-old had spent her entire military career being underestimated, dismissed, and overlooked. Today was supposed to be different, the day her true capabilities would finally be recognized. The sprawling training facility of Fort Blackwood stretched across the Montana wilderness, its buildings purposely designed to blend with the rugged landscape. For decades, it had served as the premier training ground for America's most elite military units. Special operations teams from every branch competed fiercely for access to its advanced combat simulations and tactical ranges. Maya had never expected to set foot inside. Until 3 weeks ago. A bearded member of Delta Team whispered for others to look at her, saying she probably couldn't even field strip an M4 blindfolded. Maya heard him perfectly. Her hearing was exceptional, but she kept her eyes forward, fixed on Captain Reynolds. As he continued reviewing her results, she didn't need their approval. She needed their access. The journey to this moment had been anything but simple. Growing up in a small farming community in Ohio, Maya had always felt different from her peers. While other girls her age focused on social media and dating, Maya had spent countless hours studying military history, tactics, and physical training. Her parents, both professors at the local community college, had worried about her singular focus but supported her nevertheless. Reynolds said she was only supposed to demonstrate the basic training protocols, turning to Colonel Fletcher, the program director, asking who authorized her to attempt the Special Operations Assessment. Fletcher looked equally confused, noting that nobody did. The system showed she accessed it on her own after completing the basic evaluation. The room grew tense. Unauthorized access to Special Operations protocols was a serious breach of security. Maya could feel the shift in the atmosphere, curiosity giving way to suspicion. Maya finally spoke, her voice clear and controlled, explaining that she completed the basic assessment in 17 minutes. The Special Operations evaluation was open on the adjacent terminal. She asked the technician if she could try it, and he approved. This was partially true. The technician had nodded absently, barely looking up from his phone, assuming she was just another staff member rather than a basic training graduate being evaluated for potential advancement. Reynolds countered that didn't explain these scores, pointing at the screen. Nobody got perfect marks on their first attempt. Nobody. The results displayed behind him told an impossible story. Perfect scores in tactical assessment, weapons proficiency, threat neutralization, hostage rescue, and communication security. Even more impressive were her times. Each segment completed faster than the established records. Maya remained silent again. Explaining would only sound like excuses to these men. They wouldn't understand or believe the truth about her training. Colonel Fletcher stepped forward, his gray eyes studying Maya with new interest. He asked Private Chen if her file was correct, that she had only completed basic training plus 8 weeks of advanced individual training. She confirmed, "Yes, sir." He asked if her specialty was communications. She again confirmed, "Yes, sir." A ripple of laughter moved through the special operations teams, gathered along the back wall of the room. Communications was considered a support role, essential but not where you found warriors. Maya ignored them. Fletcher asked how someone with her limited training just outperformed teams with years of specialized tactical experience. His voice held genuine curiosity rather than accusation. Maya hesitated. The complete truth would sound insane. The partial truth might be enough. She explained that she studied in her free time. More laughter from the back of the room. Reynolds repeated incredulously that she studied, saying you couldn't study your way to these kinds of combat scores. Maya took a calculated risk, explaining with respect that yes, you could. She had spent approximately 6,000 hours in self-directed training over the past 5 years. She had created simulation environments using household items. She had memorized every field manual available to the public. She had conditioned her body to operate under extreme stress and sleep deprivation. The laughter had stopped now. The special operations teams were watching her with expressions ranging from disbelief to newfound wariness. Colonel Fletcher folded his arms across his chest, asking why exactly she did all this. Maya met his gaze directly, saying because no one believed she could. The room fell silent. Something in her tone, the quiet certainty, the complete lack of bravado, gave her words weight. Fletcher glanced at Reynolds, who shrugged slightly, still skeptical. Fletcher said that scores on a simulation were one thing, but real-world application was quite another. Maya acknowledged she understood. Fletcher raised an eyebrow, asking if she did, because tomorrow morning she would be joining Razor Team for their wilderness survival assessment. 7 days in the mountains with minimal equipment. They would see if her studying prepared her for that. Maya nodded once, thanking him for the opportunity. As she turned to leave, she heard one of the special ops members mutter that this should be entertaining, that little Miss Perfect Score would be crying for extraction by day 2. Maya didn't react. She had learned patience from her grandfather, a Chinese immigrant who had served as a military advisor before settling in Ohio. He had told her repeatedly during her childhood to let them underestimate you, that your advantage lies in their dismissal. The barracks assigned to her were empty, a small mercy. Maya needed time to prepare both mentally and physically for the challenge ahead. The Wilderness Survival Assessment was legendary for its brutality. Teams were dropped into remote locations with minimal supplies and expected to navigate treacherous terrain while completing mission objectives under simulated enemy pressure. She sat cross-legged on her bunk, closed her eyes, and began cycling through visualization exercises. In her mind, she reviewed topographical maps of the Montana wilderness, cataloging likely drop zones and extraction points. She mentally inventoried standard issue survival gear, calculating possible improvisations for missing equipment. A knock at the door interrupted her preparation. Maya opened her eyes to find a young female lieutenant standing in the doorway, arms crossed defensively. The woman introduced herself as Lieutenant Sarah Dawson, explaining that Colonel Fletcher asked her to brief Maya on tomorrow's exercise. Maya stood and saluted, thanking the lieutenant. Dawson studied her with undisguised curiosity, asking how she did it, noting those scores had everyone talking. Maya replied cautiously that she didn't do anything special, she just followed the protocols. Dawson said that was bullshit, though her tone wasn't unkind. She had been there 3 years. Nobody followed protocols perfectly, not even the instructors. Who designed them? Maya remained silent, unsure how much to reveal. Lieutenant Dawson represented her first potential ally in this hostile environment, but trust didn't come easily to Maya. Dawson sighed, explaining she wasn't there to pump her for secrets. But Maya should know what she was walking into tomorrow. Razor Team wasn't just any special ops unit. They were the best they had, and they didn't take kindly to outsiders showing them up. Maya said quietly that she wasn't trying to show anyone up, she was just doing her best. Dawson replied that her best was better than theirs, and that was the problem. Dawson leaned against the doorframe, explaining they were already planning ways to make her fail tomorrow. Nothing dangerous, but they would isolate her, mislead her, maybe even sabotage her equipment. Maya nodded, saying she expected that. Dawson looked surprised, asking if she was okay with it. Maya replied that it didn't matter if she was okay with it, it was reality. She began organizing her gear on the bed, standard procedure before any mission, asking why Dawson was telling her this. Dawson was quiet for a moment, then explained that she scored at the top of her class too. Not like Maya, nobody had ever scored like her, but high enough that the men resented it. They made sure I failed my first field exercise. I don't want to see that happen to someone else. Maya looked up from her preparations. I appreciate the warning, Lieutenant. But this isn't my first experience with people wanting me to fail. Something in Maya's expression must have convinced Dawson, because she nodded slowly. All right then. The briefing is at 05:00 tomorrow. Bring full gear. Drop is at 06:30. After Dawson left, Maya returned to her preparations with methodical precision. She checked and double-checked her equipment, then began a series of stretching exercises designed to prevent muscle cramping during long periods of inactivity useful for surveillance positions or waiting for extraction. As night fell over Fort Blackwood, most personnel headed to the mess hall or recreation facilities. Maya remained in her barracks, eating an energy bar while reviewing satellite imagery of the training area that she had memorized months ago, just in case an opportunity like this ever presented itself. Her preparation went beyond the physical. Maya understood that tomorrow's challenge was as much psychological as tactical. Razor Team would be watching for any sign of weakness, any excuse to dismiss her performance as a fluke. She thought back to her childhood, to the constant dismissal she had experienced when expressing interest in military service. Her high school guidance counselor had suggested nursing instead. Her college advisor had pushed her toward intelligence analysis rather than combat roles. Even her military recruiter had tried steering her away from roles that might lead to deployment. Maya had accepted their guidance publicly while preparing privately for the path she actually wanted. While her peers attended parties and built social connections, Maya had transformed her small apartment into a training facility. She converted her living room into an obstacle course. Her bedroom became a tactical planning center, walls covered with maps and diagrams. Her bathroom doubled as a space to practice water survival techniques. Every paycheck went toward specialized training materials, books written by former Special Forces operators, online courses in tactical medicine, wilderness survival guides. She taught herself to read military documents, decoding the specialized language and applying the lessons in practical ways. Her neighbors thought she was strange. Her family worried she was obsessive. Maya didn't care. She had seen her future with perfect clarity since age 12, when she witnessed a special operations team rescue hostages from a militant group that had taken over the American embassy in a small Southeast Asian country. The precision, discipline, and effectiveness of that team had imprinted on her young mind. If the military wouldn't give her the training she needed, she would create it herself. The first light of dawn was breaking when Maya finished her preparations. She had slept exactly 4 hours, the minimum required for cognitive function without degradation, according to the studies she had memorized. She dressed quickly in her combat uniform, laced her boots with double knots, and headed to the briefing room. The members of Razor Team were already assembled when she arrived, 6 men with the hard-weathered look of soldiers who had seen real combat. Their team leader, Master Sergeant Wade Jackson, tracked her with cold eyes as she entered the room. Maya had researched him: two-decorated veteran, multiple combat deployments, reputation for tactical brilliance, and absolute loyalty to his team. "Private Chen," he acknowledged her with minimal courtesy. "We've been informed you'll be joining. U.S. today. Try to keep up." Maya nodded but said nothing. "Save energy. Minimize targets for criticism." These were principles she lived by. Colonel Fletcher entered the briefing room, accompanied by Captain Reynolds and Lieutenant Dawson. Fletcher nodded to the assembled group before activating the main screen. "Today's exercise is a modified version of our standard wilderness survival assessment," Fletcher explained, pointing to a topographical map of a mountainous region. "Teams will be dropped here at separate insertion points 5 kilometers apart. Your objective is to navigate to this extraction point within 7 days while completing mission objectives. That will be revealed through secure communications during the exercise." Maya studied the map carefully, memorizing key terrain features, possible water sources, and likely hazard zones. "Each team member will carry standard survival gear plus 1 specialty item," Fletcher continued. "No communications with base except for emergency extraction. This is a live-fire exercise using simulation rounds." Maya noticed the glances exchanged among Razor team members. Live-fire meant they could shoot at her with training ammunition, painful, but not lethal. "One final note," Fletcher said, his gaze settling on Maya. "Private Chen will be evaluated as an individual operator, not as part of Razor team. Her performance will not affect team scores." This announcement triggered visible relief among the special ops soldiers. They wouldn't be punished for her failures or have to acknowledge her successes. "Any questions?" Fletcher asked. Master Sergeant Jackson raised a hand. "Sir, what's the real purpose of this exercise? We all know Private Chen doesn't have the training for this assessment." Fletcher's expression remained neutral. "The purpose, Sergeant Jackson, is to determine whether simulation results translate to field performance. Private Chen has demonstrated exceptional aptitude in controlled environments. Now we'll see how she performs when conditions are unpredictable." Jackson nodded, seeming satisfied with the explanation. Maya understood what was really happening. This wasn't just an assessment. It was a deliberate attempt to expose her limitations. They expected her to fail spectacularly, confirming their belief that her test scores were either a fluke or the result of some kind of cheating. They had no idea what she was capable of. The transport helicopter vibrated beneath Maya as it approached the drop zone. Seated across from her, Razor team performed final equipment checks while occasionally casting skeptical glances her way. They had barely spoken to her during preparation, maintaining professional distance while making it clear she wasn't welcome. Lieutenant Dawson had pulled her aside just before boarding. "Remember, you don't have to prove anything. If conditions become dangerous, call for extraction. No assessment is worth your safety." Maya had thanked her for the concern, but they both knew she wouldn't call for help. This was her one chance to demonstrate her capabilities to people who mattered in the special operations community. Failure wasn't an option. The helicopter door slid open, revealing dense forest canopy below. Mountain peaks rose in the distance, their tops still capped with snow despite the summer season. Beautiful but unforgiving terrain. "Razor team, prepare for insertion," the crew chief shouted over the roar of the rotors. "Private Chen, you'll drop last." Maya checked her harness one final time as she watched the special operators hook up to the fast rope system. One by one, they descended into the forest below, their movements fluid and practiced. When the last team member disappeared from view, the crew chief turned to her. "Your drop point is 2 clicks east," he said. "Good luck. You'll need it." As the helicopter repositioned, Maya centered herself mentally. Everything she had worked for culminated in this moment. Years of solitary training, countless hours of study, all the ridicule and dismissal, none of it mattered now. Only performance counted. The helicopter hovered over a small clearing. "Ready?" the crew chief asked. Maya nodded, grabbed the rope, and slid into the unknown. Maya's boots connected with the forest floor with practiced precision, her body automatically absorbing the impact through bent knees. She detached from the rope with one fluid motion and immediately moved into the tree line for cover standard. Procedure when landing in potentially hostile territory. The helicopter pulled away, its rotor wash stirring the pine needles around her. Alone in the wilderness, Maya performed a quick assessment. The coordinates on her GPS indicated she had been dropped exactly at the planned insertion point, 2 kilometers east of Razor Team, just as the crew chief had said. She conducted an equipment check, verifying that everything was still secure after the drop. Something felt wrong. Her main pack seemed lighter than it should be. Maya opened it quickly and discovered that several critical items were missing: her tactical flashlight, water purification tablets, and half of her ration packs. Not a coincidence. Someone had deliberately sabotaged her gear. Instead of anger, Maya felt a strange sense of calm. This was exactly what Lieutenant Dawson had warned her about. The sabotage confirmed that Razor Team, or at least some of its members, saw her as a genuine threat to their status. They wouldn't have bothered if they truly believed she was incapable. "Adapt and overcome," she whispered to herself, the mantra she had lived by for years. She assessed her resources. The missing items were significant, but not mission critical. She still had her knife compass, minimal survival gear, and the specialty item she had selected: a compact, tactical medical kit rather than the weapons or communications equipment the others had chosen. The choice had earned her mocking looks during preparation, but Maya had studied the mission parameters carefully. Historical data from previous assessments indicated that medical emergencies were the most common reason for early extraction. The first mission objective appeared on her handheld device. Navigate to Checkpoint Alpha. Coordinates: 47, 8,912, -115, 6,734. Maintain stealth. Hostile forces operating in area. Maya checked the coordinates against her mental map. The checkpoint was approximately 15 kilometers northwest of her position, requiring her to cross rugged terrain including a river and several steep ridges. Under normal circumstances, a challenging but straightforward navigation exercise, but hostile forces changed the equation. The exercise would include opposition forces, other military personnel playing the role of enemy combatants. They would be hunting for participants, using simulation weapons that fired painful but non-lethal marking rounds. Maya moved deeper into the forest, using the thick undergrowth for concealment as she plotted her route. The most direct path would take her through exposed areas, making her an easy target. Instead, she chose a longer route that utilized natural cover and terrain features to mask her movement. The first day passed uneventfully as Maya made steady progress through the forest. She moved with the methodical patience she had cultivated through years of self-training, stepping carefully to minimize noise, constantly scanning her surroundings for signs of observation or pursuit. She used streams to mask her scent and occasionally doubled back on her trail to check for followers. By nightfall, she had covered nearly 8 kilometers, good progress considering the challenging terrain. She found a sheltered position beneath a rock overhang, partially concealed by dense brush, and prepared to make camp. Without her tactical flashlight, she would need to complete all preparations before darkness fell completely. Rather than using her limited rations, Maya foraged for edible plants she had memorized from wilderness survival manuals. She collected water from a nearby stream, using heated rocks to boil it in a makeshift container crafted from birch bark, a technique she had practiced countless times in her apartment bathroom. As night descended over the mountains, Maya reflected on the distance between her current reality and the dismissive laughter she had endured just 24 hours earlier. Those men had seen only what they expected to see: a basic training. Graduate delusions of grandeur. They couldn't comprehend the depth of her preparation or the intensity of her determination. Her thoughts drifted to her childhood friend Emma, the only person who had ever truly understood her singular focus. When neighborhood kids had mocked Maya for spending weekends practicing tactical movements instead of going to the mall, Emma had defended her fiercely. "Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it's wrong," Emma had told the other girls. Later, privately, she asked Maya why military training mattered so much to her. "Because I need to prove I can," Maya had answered simply. "Everyone keeps telling me what I can't do, what I shouldn't even try. I need to show them and myself that they're wrong." Emma had moved away during high school, but her unwavering belief in Maya's capabilities had sustained her through years of solitary training. Someday, Maya promised herself, she would find Emma and thank her properly. The sound of voices jolted Maya from her memories. Distant but clear, multiple speakers moving through the forest roughly half a kilometer to the west. Opposition forces, most likely, conducting night patrols. Maya remained perfectly still, controlling her breathing as she had practiced during countless hours of meditation. The voices grew gradually louder, then faded as the patrol moved past her position without detecting her presence. Only when silence had returned for a full 30 minutes did Maya allow herself to relax slightly. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she practiced the controlled rest techniques she had learned from Special Operations Manual's 20-minute intervals of deep meditation, alternating with periods of alert watchfulness. By dawn, she was rested enough to continue. The second day brought new challenges. Maya's route took her along a narrow ridge with limited cover, making her potentially visible to any opposition forces in the valley below. She moved in short bursts, using boulders and scrub brush for concealment, freezing in place whenever aircraft passed overhead. Midway through the afternoon, her tactical instincts triggered a warning. Something didn't feel right. Maya dropped into a prone position behind a fallen log, scanning her surroundings carefully. Nothing moved except the natural sway of vegetation in the mountain breeze. Then she spotted it, a slight irregularity in the pattern of shadows beneath. A cluster of pine trees approximately 200 meters ahead. A sniper hide, expertly concealed but visible to her trained eye. Maya plotted a new course, one that would take her around the hidden observer without exposing her position. The detour would cost valuable time, but moving directly into a potential ambush would end her assessment immediately. 2 hours later, having successfully navigated around the threat, Maya encountered an unexpected obstacle, a steep rock face blocking her planned route. The cliff hadn't appeared on any of the maps she had studied. Either the topographical data was outdated, or this was an intentional challenge added to test adaptability. She assessed her options. Climbing the rock face directly would leave her exposed. Going around would add kilometers to her journey. Maya chose a third option, backtracking to a stream she had crossed earlier and following it through a narrow ravine that should, based on watershed patterns, provide a natural path. Through the obstacle, the gamble paid off. The stream led to a navigable passage that brought her back on course with minimal delay. By nightfall of the second day, Maya had covered another 12 kilometers, putting her within striking distance of Checkpoint Alpha. She made camp in a dense thicket, constructing a simple shelter from fallen branches and leaves. Without her full ration allotment, hunger was becoming a factor. Maya supplemented her minimal provisions with edible roots and berries, carefully identifying safe species based on the botanical knowledge she had diligently studied. As she prepared for another night of vigilance, her device beeped softly, a new message. Objective update. Opposition forces have captured an allied operative at Checkpoint Alpha. Extract the prisoner and proceed to Checkpoint Bravo. Coordinates 48, 0223, 115, 9138. The mission had just become significantly more complex. Extraction meant potential engagement with hostile forces, no longer just evasion but direct action. For the first time, Maya felt a flicker of doubt. Her self-training had included combat techniques, but she had never tested them against trained operators in field conditions. "Trust your preparation," she whispered to herself, recalling the thousands of hours she had spent drilling combat maneuvers in her apartment. Trust the process. Maya used the remaining hours of daylight to scout the approach to Checkpoint Alpha. Using the compact binoculars from her survival kit, she observed the target area from multiple vantage points, identifying 4 opposition force members guarding what appeared to be a small camp. A 5th figure, presumably the captured operative, sat bound to a tree in the center of the clearing. Maya studied their patrol patterns, noting the rotation of guards and the gaps in their surveillance coverage. They were good professional and disciplined, but they were also comfortable, confident that no assessment participant would reach this area so quickly. Their overconfidence created small vulnerabilities in their security posture. Night fell, bringing a light rain that further aided Maya's approach. She moved silently through the darkness, using the sound of rainfall to mask her movement as she worked her way to within 30 meters of the perimeter. There, concealed in dense underbrush, she waited for the optimal moment. The guard rotation at 0200 provided her opportunity. As one sentry moved to replace another, creating a momentary gap in coverage, Maya slipped through the perimeter. Moving from shadow to shadow, she approached the captive from behind, keeping the tree between herself and the nearest guard. The prisoner was actually Lieutenant Dawson, a surprise Maya hadn't anticipated. Dawson's eyes widened in shock as Maya appeared beside her, knife already working to cut the ropes binding her wrists. "How did you?" Dawson began to whisper. Maya placed a finger to her lips, signaling silence. Once the restraints were cut, she motioned for Dawson to follow her along the escape route she had identified during her reconnaissance. They had moved less than 10 meters when a shout broke the night's quiet. "Perimeter breach! East side!" Maya reacted instantly, changing direction as flashlight beams began sweeping the area. She led Dawson toward a drainage ditch she had noted during her observation, a natural pathway leading away from the camp that offered concealment from pursuers. "Contact!" Another voice shouted, followed by the distinctive pop of simulation rounds being fired in their direction. Maya felt the sting as one round struck her upper arm, but she continued moving, pulling Dawson down into the ditch as more rounds impacted around them. "Stay low and keep moving," Maya instructed, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting behind them. 300 meters to the tree line. "Then we split up to divide their pursuit." "Split up?" "That wasn't in the scenario brief," Dawson objected. "Improvise, adapt, overcome," Maya replied, using the mantra that had guided her training. For years, they reached the forest edge with opposition forces still in pursuit. As planned, Maya and Dawson separated, moving in different directions to confuse their trackers. Maya circled back toward a rally point she had identified during her approach, trusting Dawson to do the same. 30 minutes later, having successfully evaded pursuit, Maya waited at the designated location. When Dawson appeared, moving quietly through the underbrush, Maya felt a surge of satisfaction. The extraction had succeeded. That was impressive, Dawson admitted as they began moving toward Checkpoint Bravo. "Where did you learn those movement techniques?" "That wasn't standard training. Books, videos, practice," Maya answered simply. "I studied how special operations teams move in complex environments, then replicated the techniques in environments I could access." "You can't learn this stuff from books," Dawson insisted. "The situational awareness, the decision-making under pressure, those are skills that come from actual field experience." Maya didn't argue. She understood Dawson's perspective. It matched the conventional wisdom throughout the military community. But Maya had never accepted conventional limitations. Where others saw impossible barriers, she saw challenges to overcome through creative solutions and relentless practice. They traveled through the remainder of the night, putting distance between themselves and the opposition forces. By dawn, they had covered nearly 11 kilometers of difficult terrain, moving steadily toward Checkpoint Bravo. "We should rest," Dawson suggested as sunlight began filtering through the forest canopy. "Standard protocol is to establish a secure position during daylight hours." "The opposition will be expecting that," Maya replied. "They'll be searching likely rest locations within our movement radius. We should continue while they're operating under standard assumptions." Dawson studied her with newfound respect. "Not bad, Chen. Where'd you learn counter-pursuit tactics?" "I studied patterns from historical special operations missions," Maya explained as they continued moving. "When conventional forces encounter specialized units, they typically apply standard doctrine. Success comes from operating outside expected parameters." Throughout the third day, Maya and Dawson made steady progress toward Checkpoint Bravo, encountering no further opposition. Maya shared her limited rations and demonstrated wilderness survival techniques that impressed even the experienced lieutenant. "Seriously, who taught you all this?" Dawson asked as Maya created a water filtration system using sand, charcoal, and cloth layers. "Nobody taught me," Maya admitted. "I couldn't access formal training for these skills, so I found alternatives. Books, videos, trial and error in controlled environments." "That's dedication," Dawson said, clearly struggling to reconcile Maya's capabilities with her limited formal training. "People tell us what we can't do based on their own limitations," Maya replied. "I decided not to accept those boundaries." By nightfall, they were within 2 kilometers of Checkpoint Bravo. Maya's device beeped with another update. "Objective modified. Checkpoint Bravo compromised. Proceed to emergency extraction point. Coordinates 48, 1543, -116, 0219. Be advised. All remaining assessment participants considered hostile." Maya shared the update with Dawson, whose expression grew serious. "That changes things," the lieutenant said. "Those coordinates are at least 25 kilometers from here, through the most difficult terrain in the assessment area. And with Razor Team potentially hunting us now." Maya nodded, understanding the implications. Razor Team consisted of elite operators with years of actual field experience. They would be formidable opposition, especially given their motivation to see her fail. "We should separate," Maya suggested. "You head directly to the extraction point. I'll create a diversion to draw attention away from your movement." "That's not happening," Dawson replied firmly. "First, it violates assessment protocols. Second, I'm not leaving you to face Razor Team alone just to save myself." Maya recognized the resolve in Dawson's voice and nodded. "Then we move together. But use deception. We'll create false trails, use terrain masking, and travel during their expected rest periods." They set out immediately, using the cover of darkness to make initial progress toward the extraction point. Maya led them along game trails and stream beds where possible, minimizing sign of their passage. When they needed to cross open areas, they did so in short bursts, using natural features for concealment. The fourth day brought their first encounter with Razor Team. Moving through a narrow valley, Maya spotted movement on a ridge overlooking their position. She immediately signaled Dawson to freeze, then slowly pointed toward the threat. Through her binoculars, Maya could clearly identify Master Sergeant Jackson and 2 other team members establishing observation positions along the ridgeline. Their positioning suggested they had anticipated this route and were preparing an ambush. "They've got the high ground and clear fields of fire," Dawson whispered. "We can't move through this valley without being spotted." "Then we don't move through it," Maya replied, already formulating an alternative. "We use their expectations against them." Her plan was unconventional, but tactically sound. While Razor Team watched the valley, expecting them to attempt a stealthy passage, Maya and Dawson would instead climb the ridge at its steepest point, a challenging ascent that conventional wisdom would consider too difficult and exposed to attempt. That's a near-vertical climb, Dawson objected. And they'll see us the moment we start ascending. They won't be looking there, Maya countered. Their attention is focused on the valley floor where they expect us to appear. The human eye tracks movement and searches in expected locations. If we move slowly enough up that rock face, staying within the shadow line, we'll be effectively invisible unless they specifically look directly at our position. Dawson looked skeptical but nodded. Your assessment so far? Your call. The climb was grueling, nearly 300 meters of exposed rock face with minimal handholds. Maya moved with deliberate precision, testing each hold before committing. Her weight, signaling safe routes to Dawson, who followed several meters behind. The ascent took nearly 4 hours, their muscles burning with the sustained effort, but Maya's prediction proved accurate. Not once did the Razor Team members on the ridge turn to check the cliff face behind them. When they finally crested the ridge, they found themselves less than 50 meters behind the Razor Team observation post. Maya signaled for absolute silence. As they carefully maneuvered around the position, using the team's own focus on the valley below to mask their movement. Once clear of immediate detection, Maya and Dawson increased their pace, putting distance between themselves and the Razor Team members who remained unaware that their quarry had slipped past them. That shouldn't have worked, Dawson said when they were safely beyond earshot. Everything about that approach violated tactical doctrine. Doctrine is based on probabilities, Maya replied. It tells you what usually works, not what always works. Sometimes the least probable approach is the most effective precisely because no one expects it. By nightfall of the 4th day, they had covered significant ground toward the extraction point, but exhaustion was becoming a factor. Both women were operating on minimal sleep and limited rations, their bodies pushed to physical limits by the constant movement through difficult terrain. We need rest, Dawson insisted as darkness fell. 4 hours minimum. I'll take first watch. Maya reluctantly agreed. Despite her extensive conditioning, even she had limits. They found a defensible position in a dense thicket, establishing a small perimeter with improvised alarms arrangements of dry twigs that would snap loudly if disturbed by approaching threats. Maya's turn for watch came 2 hours later. As Dawson slept, Maya remained vigilant, scanning their surroundings for any sign of pursuit. The night was quiet except for natural forest sounds, the rustle of small animals, the occasional call of nocturnal birds. During these quiet hours, Maya reflected on her journey. Not just the assessment, but the years of solitary preparation that had brought her to this point. The countless times she had been told that her goals were unrealistic, that special operations weren't for people like her, that she was wasting her time and talents. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the rugged landscape in soft gold and rose. Maya gently woke Lieutenant Dawson, who transitioned from sleep to full alertness in seconds, a skill developed through years of field operations. Status? Dawson asked quietly. Clear perimeter, no contact. Approximately 18 kilometers to extraction, Maya reported, her voice steady despite the exhaustion tugging at her muscles. They broke camp efficiently, leaving minimal trace of their presence. As they prepared to move out, Maya's device beeped with another update. Final objective, reach extraction point by 1800 hours today. Opposition forces converging on your location. High-value intelligence package must be recovered en route. Coordinates 48, 1122, 116, 0011. The new coordinates place the intelligence package approximately 5 kilometers from their current position, though not directly on their path to extraction. They're really piling on the complications, Dawson observed, studying the map. This diverts us through the most difficult section of the mountain range. Maya nodded. Deliberate challenge escalation. Standard procedure when assessment participants are performing beyond expectations. Most teams don't make it this far, Dawson admitted. Especially not against opposition like Razor Team. They set out immediately, moving with greater urgency now that a time constraint had been added to their mission. The terrain grew increasingly challenging, steep slopes covered with loose shale, dense vegetation that tore at their clothing, streams swollen from recent rainfall that required careful crossing. Despite these obstacles, Maya maintained a pace that impressed even the experienced lieutenant. Her movement through difficult terrain showed none of the hesitation typical of soldiers without extensive field experience. She chose routes with tactical precision, balancing speed against security, always mindful of potential observation or ambush points. Where did you learn to read terrain like this? Dawson asked during a brief rest period. This isn't something you pick up from books. Maya took a small sip from her canteen before answering. My grandfather took me hiking in the Appalachians every summer until I was 16. He was military, taught me to see landscapes as tactical environments rather than just scenery. After he died, I continued the practice on my own. It was the most personal information she had shared since the assessment began. Dawson seemed to recognize the significance. He'd be proud of you, the lieutenant said simply. Maya didn't respond, but the words resonated. Her grandfather had been the only person in her family who truly understood her military ambitions. While her parents had gently suggested more suitable career paths, Grandfather Chen had given her books on tactical operations and taught her to navigate using natural landmarks rather than trails. The world tries to put people in boxes, he had told her once. But the most effective warriors are those who refuse those limitations. By midday, they had reached the coordinates for the intelligence package. The location was a small clearing surrounded by dense forest, an obvious choke point that would normally make any tactical operator suspicious. Feels like an ambush setup, Dawson murmured, scanning the tree line. Maya nodded. Multiple fields of fire, limited approach options, minimal cover within the clearing. Classic kill zone configuration. Instead of approaching directly, Maya led them in a wide circle around the area, studying the terrain from multiple angles. Her patience was rewarded when she spotted a subtle inconsistency, a section of underbrush that showed signs of recent disturbance. There, she whispered, pointing. Opposition force, at least 2 operators based on the position spread. Dawson followed her gaze. I don't see anything. Watch the pattern of shadow movement, Maya instructed. Natural shadows from vegetation move with the wind. Those shadows are moving against the pattern. Dawson stared for several seconds before finally nodding. I see it now. How did you spot that from this distance? Practice, Maya replied simply. I spent 3 months training my eye to detect camouflage by studying military field craft manuals, then creating test scenarios in public parks. Rather than attempting to outmaneuver the hidden operators, Maya suggested a different approach. Distraction and misdirection. We make them think we're approaching from the east while actually retrieving the package from the west. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Using techniques she had perfected during solitary training sessions, Maya created a convincing false movement signature on the eastern perimeter. Disturbed vegetation, partial footprints, broken twigs arranged to suggest hasty passage. Meanwhile, Dawson circled to the western approach, where Maya had identified a drainage culvert that provided concealed access to the clearing. As predicted, the opposition forces responded to the eastern disturbance, shifting their position. To intercept the perceived threat, Dawson slipped into the clearing, quickly located the small waterproof case that constituted their intelligence package, and withdrew before the opposition realized they had been deceived. That worked perfectly. Dawson said when they reunited at their predetermined rally point. Where did you learn distraction tactics? Predator hunting techniques, Maya explained. I studied how animals create false movement patterns to mislead threats. The principles transfer effectively to human operations. With the intelligence package secured, they turned toward the final leg of their journey, 12 kilometers of difficult terrain with extraction scheduled in less than 6 hours. Adding to the challenge, dark clouds were gathering over the mountains, promising heavy rain and reduced visibility. We should increase pace, Maya suggested. The approaching storm will provide concealment, but also make navigation more difficult. They moved swiftly but carefully, maintaining tactical awareness, even as they prioritized speed. The rain began an hour into their movement light at first, then increasing to a steady downpour that soaked through their clothing and reduced visibility to less than 50 meters. Despite these conditions, Maya never hesitated in her navigation. She moved with absolute confidence, using terrain features and her mental map to maintain their course when most operators would have slowed to check GPS coordinates. How are you navigating so accurately without constantly checking your device? Dawson asked, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the rain. I memorized the topographical maps of this entire region before the assessment, Maya explained. 30-minute study sessions twice daily for 3 weeks. I can visualize our position relative to key terrain features without electronic assistance. Dawson shook her head in amazement. That's not normal, Chen. Normal is a limitation. Maya replied. Not a goal. The storm intensified as they continued, thunder echoing through the mountains and lightning illuminating the landscape in brief, stark flashes. The deteriorating conditions would have forced most assessment teams to seek shelter and wait for improvement. Maya pressed on, adjusting their route to use the storm to their advantage, moving during thunder bursts that would mask their noise, using lightning flashes to verify terrain features. They were approximately 5 kilometers from the extraction point when Maya suddenly raised her fist, the universal signal to halt and take cover. Dawson reacted instantly, dropping into a prone position behind the nearest concealment. What is it? She whispered when Maya joined her. Movement ahead, multiple signatures. Organized search pattern. Through the curtain of rain, barely visible in the fading daylight, shadows moved with purpose through the forest ahead. Even at this distance, their disciplined movement identified them as Razor team positioned directly between Maya and Dawson and their extraction point. They've anticipated our route, Dawson observed, probably using our GPS tracking data to predict our movement corridor. Maya considered their options. Attempting to bypass Razor team would burn precious time they didn't have before extraction. Engaging directly would be tactically unsound given the team's superior numbers and combat experience. A third option was needed. We split up, Maya decided. I'll create a high-visibility movement signature to draw their pursuit. You continue to extraction with the intelligence package. That's not happening, Dawson replied firmly. First, it violates assessment protocols. Second, it's exactly what they expect, the less experienced operator sacrificing themselves so the professional can complete the mission. Maya raised an eyebrow. What do you suggest? We do what they don't expect, Dawson said, a slow smile spreading across her face. We walk right through them. The plan was audacious. Instead of attempting to evade Razor team through stealth or distraction, they would approach openly, using recognized military signals for non-hostile contact. Assessment rules prohibited Razor team from engaging participants who clearly identified themselves. They could observe and report, but not simulate killing or capturing them. It's not about outfighting them, Dawson explained. It's about changing the paradigm. They're operating under warfare rules. We switched to peacetime protocols. It was brilliant in its simplicity, exploiting a loophole in the assessment parameters. that Maya, with her focus on combat tactics, hadn't considered. This was the value of diverse perspectives, Dawson's official training complementing Maya's self-directed education. They moved forward openly, Dawson taking the lead as the higher-ranking officer. When they approached Razor Team's perimeter, she clearly signaled their presence using standard military hand signals for friendly forces. The confusion among Razor Team was evident as Maya and Dawson walked directly through their position. Master Sergeant Jackson's expression shifted from surprise to frustration as he realized the tactical checkmate. By assessment rules, his team couldn't engage participants who weren't attempting to evade detection. Creative interpretation of parameters, Lieutenant, Jackson said tightly as they passed his position. Just following the rules, Sergeant. Dawson replied with professional courtesy. Assessment guidelines don't specify that participants must evade opposition forces, only that we must reach extraction by the designated time. Jackson's gaze shifted to Maya, his expression unreadable. Unconventional approach, Private Chen. Maya maintained professional composure. Adaptation to circumstances, Sergeant. They continued past the Razor Team position without further interaction, maintaining a brisk pace toward extraction. Once beyond earshot, Dawson glanced at Maya with newfound respect. That was the real test, you know, she said quietly. Not just completing the physical challenges, but demonstrating tactical flexibility, knowing when to fight and when to find an alternative solution. Maya nodded, understanding. Special operations wasn't just about combat proficiency. It was about achieving objectives through whatever means necessary, including unconventional approaches that opponents wouldn't anticipate. They reached the extraction point with 23 minutes to spare, a clearing large enough for helicopter landing, marked with signal panels visible from the air. As they settled into defensive positions to await pickup, Dawson studied Maya with curious intensity. Why are you doing this, Chen? Why put yourself through all this just to prove something to people who dismissed you? Maya considered the question carefully. The rain had lightened to a gentle mist, and the first stars were becoming visible through breaks in the cloud cover. It was never about proving anything to them, she finally answered. It was about proving something to myself. What's that? Dawson asked. That limitations are largely self-imposed or accepted from others without question, Maya said. Most barriers can be overcome with sufficient preparation, determination, and creative thinking. The conversation paused as the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors became audible in the distance. Extraction was approaching, the successful conclusion to their 7-day assessment, compressed into less than 5 days of intense challenge. You know they still might not accept you, Dawson said as they prepared for pickup. The system resists change, especially when that change challenges fundamental assumptions about capability and qualification. I know, Maya replied, but I've already succeeded in the only way that truly matters. I set a goal that everyone said was impossible, and I achieved it through my own efforts. Whatever happens next, no one can take that accomplishment away from me. The helicopter descended through the mountain mist, its powerful searchlight illuminating the extraction zone. As they boarded, Maya took one final look at the wilderness that had tested her so thoroughly. She felt a profound sense of completion, not just of the assessment, but of a journey that had begun years earlier when a young girl had decided to chart her own path, regardless of others' expectations. 3 days later, Maya stood at attention. In Colonel Fletcher's office, her posture perfect despite the lingering fatigue from the assessment. Fletcher studied her from behind his desk, a tablet displaying assessment results positioned before him. Private Chen, he began formally, I've reviewed the complete data from your wilderness assessment. Your performance was unprecedented. Maya remained silent, maintaining professional bearing. You completed a 7-day assessment in under 5 days. You successfully evaded or neutralized opposition forces, including our most experienced special operations team. You demonstrated tactical decision-making and field craft normally associated with operators who have years of specialized training and combat deployments. Fletcher set the tablet aside, his expression thoughtful. The question is, what do we do with you now? Permission to speak freely, sir, Maya requested. Fletcher nodded. I respectfully request consideration for special operations selection. Sir, I believe my performance demonstrates both aptitude and preparation for the challenges involved. The colonel leaned back in his chair. 6 months ago, such a request would have been dismissed immediately. The pathway to special operations selection has always been clearly defined: years of conventional service, followed by specific preparatory assignments, followed by formal assessment and selection. He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the training grounds where teams of soldiers were conducting standard drills. Your situation presents a dilemma, Private. Your assessment results suggest capabilities that exceed many of our active special operators. But you lack the foundational experience that our selection process has always required. Maya remained silent, recognizing that this was Fletcher's decision to make. She had done everything within her power to demonstrate her capabilities. The rest was beyond her control. Fletcher turned back to face her. Captain Reynolds argued strongly against any special consideration. His position is that your performance, while impressive, was an anomaly that doesn't justify bypassing established qualification pathways. Maya's expression remained neutral, though the news wasn't surprising. Reynolds had made his opinion of her clear from the beginning. Master Sergeant Jackson, interestingly, disagrees, Fletcher continued. His after-action report specifically cited your adaptability and tactical innovation as indicators of special operations potential. This was unexpected. Jackson had seemed the most skeptical of all the special operators she had encountered. Lieutenant Dawson was most emphatic, Fletcher added with a slight smile. Her report stated, and I quote, Private Chen's performance wasn't just impressive for a basic training graduate, it would have been exceptional for our most seasoned operators. Denying her advanced training opportunities, based solely on conventional qualification timelines, would represent a significant waste of potential. The colonel returned to his desk, retrieving a folder that he placed before Maya. 3 days ago, I contacted General Williams at Special Operations Command. I presented your assessment data and requested guidance on how to proceed with an operator candidate who demonstrates advanced capabilities without conventional experience prerequisites. Maya's heart rate increased slightly, though her expression remained composed. The general's response was to create this, Fletcher said, gesturing to the folder. A new pathway for exceptional candidates who demonstrate extraordinary aptitude but lack traditional qualification metrics. Maya looked at the folder but didn't reach for it. It's called the Advanced Capabilities Integration Program, Fletcher explained. A specialized training track that combines accelerated conventional qualification with direct special operations skill development. The program is experimental, with only one position currently authorized. He pushed the folder toward her. That position is yours, if you want it. Maya finally allowed herself to pick up the folder, opening it to review the contents. The program description outlined an intensive 18-month training sequence that would compress what normally required years of progressive development. It won't be easy, Fletcher warned. The physical and psychological demands will exceed even what you experienced during the wilderness assessment. Many believe it's impossible to develop special operations capabilities in such a compressed time frame. The institutional resistance will be substantial. Maya closed the folder, her decision already made. When do I begin, sir? Fletcher smiled slightly. I thought you might say that. You report to Fort Bragg next week. General Williams wants to meet the soldier who outperformed his best operators with nothing but self-directed training, and determination. As Maya left the office, folder in hand, she passed Captain Reynolds in the hallway. The skeptical officer glanced at the folder, then at Maya's face, his expression unreadable. "Congratulations, Private," he said stiffly. "Thank you, sir," Maya replied with professional courtesy. "You proved me wrong," Reynolds added, the admission clearly difficult for him. "I didn't think it was possible to develop those capabilities without formal training and field experience." Maya paused, considering her response carefully. "With respect, sir, perhaps the limitation wasn't in what's possible, but in what we believe is possible." Reynolds studied her for a moment before nodding slowly. "Carry on, Private." Outside the administration building, Maya found Lieutenant Dawson waiting for her, leaning against a tactical vehicle with arms crossed. "So?" Dawson asked as Maya approached. "What's the verdict?" Maya handed her the folder. Dawson scanned the contents, a broad smile spreading across her face. "The Advanced Capabilities Integration Program? They created an entirely new training track for you?" She laughed, shaking her head in amazement. "You didn't just break the glass ceiling, Chen. You shattered the entire building." "I couldn't have done it without your support," Maya said sincerely. "When everyone else was looking for ways to prove I didn't belong, you gave me the chance to prove that I did." "I just recognized talent," Dawson replied, handing the folder back. "You did all the hard work long before you ever met me. Years of preparation when no one believed in you, that's the real achievement here." They walked together toward the barracks, where Maya would begin packing for her transfer to Fort Bragg. "You know what impressed me most?" Dawson said after a moment of comfortable silence. "Not the tactical skills or the physical capabilities, impressive as they were. It was your mindset. The absolute conviction that limitations are largely self-imposed or accepted without question. My grandfather used to say that the most dangerous prison is the one we build in our own minds," Maya replied. "Once we accept that something is impossible for us, we stop trying to achieve it." "Your grandfather was a wise man," Dawson observed. "He was," Maya agreed. "He also said that true strength isn't about proving others wrong, it's about living according to your own authentic vision, regardless of external judgment." They reached the barracks, pausing outside the entrance. Dawson extended her hand formally. "It's been an honor working with you, Private Chen. I have a feeling we'll meet again under different circumstances." Maya shook her hand. "I hope so, Lieutenant." As Dawson walked away, Maya stood for a moment in the fading afternoon light, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. From a small farming community in Ohio to the threshold of elite special operations. A small farming community in Ohio to the threshold of elite special operations. Path that conventional wisdom had insisted was impossible for someone with her background and limited formal training. The Advanced Capabilities Integration Program represented not just personal validation, but potentially systemic change. If she succeeded, and she was determined to do so, she would create a precedent that might open doors for others who demonstrated exceptional aptitude outside traditional pathways. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Master Sergeant Jackson, who approached with the measured stride of a career operator. "Private Chen," he acknowledged her with a nod. "I heard about your new assignment." "Yes, Sergeant," Maya replied, curious about his presence. "I owe you an apology," Jackson said, his tone professional but sincere. "I judged you based on assumptions rather than demonstrated capability. That was unprofessional of me." "No apology necessary, Sergeant," Maya assured him. "Skepticism toward unproven operators is prudent, not prejudiced." Jackson studied her with newfound respect. "That's a mature perspective. Most people in your position would savor the vindication." "Vindication wasn't my goal," Maya explained. "Capability development was. Your skepticism provided additional motivation during my preparation." A hint of a smile crossed Jackson's normally stern features. "Well, you'll find plenty more skeptics at Fort Bragg. Special operations communities don't embrace change easily." "I understand, Sergeant. One piece of advice," Jackson offered. "The technical skills matter, but it's the mindset that separates special operators from conventional forces. The ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome regardless of circumstances. You've already demonstrated that mindset. Don't lose it among the formal training structures." "I won't," Maya promised. "Thank you for the advice." As Jackson departed, Maya felt a sense of completion. The wilderness assessment had been more than a physical and tactical challenge. It had been the culmination of years of solitary preparation and unwavering self-belief. Tomorrow would bring new challenges at Fort Bragg, new skeptics to convince, new barriers to overcome. But for today, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Not because she had proven others wrong, but because she had proven herself right. That evening, as Maya packed her few possessions for transfer, she found a small envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten note from Colonel Fletcher. "Private Chen, your performance during the wilderness assessment has challenged fundamental assumptions about talent development and qualification pathways within our organization. The easy response would have been to dismiss your success as an anomaly and maintain established systems. The right response was to recognize that exceptional talent sometimes emerges through unconventional channels. The Advanced Capabilities Integration Program represents more than an opportunity for you personally. It represents our commitment to identifying and developing exceptional potential wherever it appears. Your success or failure will influence how we approach talent identification for years to come. No pressure. Colonel R. Fletcher." Maya smiled at the colonel's dry humor. She carefully folded the note and placed it in her journal, a record of her journey from self-taught aspirant to pioneering candidate in an experimental program that might reshape special operations selection. As night fell over Fort Blackwood, Maya stepped outside for one last look at the training grounds that had finally given her the opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities. Stars shimmered above the mountain peaks, the same stars that had guided her during the wilderness assessment. In that moment, Maya thought of all the others like her, individuals with exceptional potential, but without conventional pathways to develop it. Perhaps her journey would help create new possibilities for them as well. She had never sought to be a trailblazer. She had simply refused to accept that her dreams were impossible merely because others said they were. That refusal, the quiet, stubborn determination to find her own way when conventional paths were close to her, had brought her here, to the threshold of a future that once seemed unreachable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new doubts, new obstacles to overcome, but Maya Chen was ready. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. They had laughed at her basic training until she outperformed every special operations team. They wouldn't be laughing anymore. Fort Bragg loomed before Maya like a fortress of tradition, imposing, unyielding, steeped in decades of special operations history. The sprawling military installation housed some of the most elite units in the United States Armed Forces, their legacy built through generations of conventional progression through established pathways. Now she stood at its gates, an anomaly, about to challenge its most fundamental assumptions about talent development. "Private Chen?" A staff sergeant approached as she completed processing at the reception center. "I'm Sergeant Miller. I've been assigned to escort you to General Williams." Maya shouldered her duffel bag and followed the sergeant to a waiting vehicle. As they drove through the base, she observed the various training facilities with keen interest: ranges, obstacle courses, urban combat simulators, and tactical operations centers. Soldiers moved with purpose throughout the complex, their bearing reflecting the elite standards of this installation. "First time at Bragg?" Miller asked, breaking the silence. "Yes, Sergeant." "Word of advice, keep your head down and follow instructions. This isn't a place that welcomes Exceptions. There was something in his tone that suggested he knew exactly why she was there. Maya nodded but said nothing. She had expected resistance. Her entire journey had been defined by overcoming institutional skepticism. They arrived at a nondescript building near the center of the base. Unlike the training facilities they had passed, this structure featured minimal identifying markings, just a simple sign reading, Special Operations Command Development Center. Inside, Maya was led through security checkpoints to a conference room where 4 people waited. She recognized General Williams immediately from news photographs, a tall, imposing figure with close-cropped gray hair and the weathered features of a career operator. Beside him stood a woman in civilian clothing whose bearing suggested military background, and 2 senior officers Maya didn't recognize. Private Chen, General Williams greeted her, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. "Welcome to Fort Bragg." "Thank you, sir." Maya stood at attention, maintaining perfect military bearing. "At ease," Williams instructed. "This isn't a formal inspection. Take a seat." Once seated, Maya studied the others in the room. The civilian woman watched her with analytical precision, while the 2 officers maintained neutral expressions that revealed nothing of their thoughts. "I'll get straight to the point," Williams began. "Your performance at Fort Blackwood has created quite a stir within our community. Some see it as a fluke. Others view it as evidence that our traditional development pipelines may be overlooking exceptional talent." He gestured to the civilian. "This is Dr. Eleanor Matthews, our Chief of Talent Assessment and Psychological Operations. The gentlemen are Colonel Hayden from our Training Directorate and Major Thompson from Operational Planning." Each nodded as they were introduced, their expressions remaining professionally neutral. "The Advanced Capabilities Integration Program is experimental," Williams continued, "designed specifically to determine whether individuals with extraordinary aptitude but non-traditional backgrounds can be effectively integrated into special operations roles. You are its first participant, which means you will be under intense scrutiny from all quarters." "I understand, sir," Maya replied. "Do you?" Dr. Matthews spoke for the first time, her tone sharp with skepticism. "You're entering an environment where failure is not just expected, but anticipated with certainty by many. The institutional resistance to your presence here will be substantial and persistent." "With respect, Dr. Matthews," Maya responded evenly, "institutional resistance is nothing new to me. I've encountered it at every stage of my development." "This is different," Matthews countered. "At Fort Blackwood, you were a curiosity. Here, you represent a potential threat to established systems, career pathways, and institutional beliefs. About talent development, many will actively work to ensure your failure to validate their existing worldview." Maya met the psychologist's gaze directly. "I didn't come here seeking approval or acceptance. I came to develop my capabilities and contribute to the mission." A flicker of something, perhaps approval, crossed Matthew's face before her professional mask returned. General Williams nodded slightly. "The program has 3 phases over 18 months. Phase 1 focuses on accelerated tactical and technical development, compressing years of conventional experience into 14 weeks of intensive training. Phase 2 integrates you with operational teams for controlled mission scenarios. Phase 3 involves actual deployment with special operations units under supervised conditions." He leaned forward, his expression intensifying. "Your performance will be measured against operators with years of field experience. The standards will not be lowered. If anything, they will be heightened due to the experimental nature of this program. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear, sir." "Good," Williams said, sitting back. "Phase 1 begins tomorrow at 0500. I suggest you get settled and rest while you can." As Maya stood to leave, Williams added, "One more thing, Private. This program has significant opposition within our command structure. Its continuation beyond your participation depends entirely on your performance. No pressure. Maya recognized the echo of Colonel Fletcher's note and allowed herself a small smile. Understood, sir. She was escorted to her quarters, a sparse but private room in a section of barracks usually reserved for visiting instructors. The isolation wasn't accidental, she suspected. It established her separate status from the beginning. After stowing her gear, Maya spent the evening reviewing the program materials provided during in-processing. The training schedule was brutally intensive 16-hour days combining physical conditioning, tactical instruction, technical skills development, and psychological resilience training. The expected learning curve was nearly vertical. Most would have found the prospect intimidating. Maya saw it as the opportunity she had been preparing for her entire life. At precisely 0445 the next morning, Maya stood ready outside the designated training facility, her gear perfectly arranged according to specifications. The pre-dawn air carried a chill that penetrated her uniform, but she remained motionless, focused on the challenge ahead. At 0500 sharp, the facility door opened to reveal a compact, muscular man with the hardened features of someone who had spent decades in the most demanding environments imaginable. "Private Chen," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent Maya identified as Serbian. "I am Master Sergeant Dragan Kovac. For the next 14 weeks, I own you." Maya saluted crisply. "Yes, Sergeant." Kovac's expression remained impassive as he returned the salute. Inside, now, the training facility was unlike anything Maya had seen before, a cavernous space filled with specialized equipment, simulation environments, weapon systems, and technical stations. It appeared designed to replicate every possible operational scenario a special operator might encounter. "This program," Kovac began without preamble, "is a waste of my time and the government's money. You cannot compress years of field experience into 14 weeks of training, no matter how intensive." Maya remained at attention, saying nothing. "However," he continued, circling her slowly, "I have been ordered to attempt this impossible task. So we will begin with an assessment to determine exactly how much remedial work is required." What followed was the most comprehensive evaluation Maya had ever experienced, more demanding even than the wilderness assessment at Fort Blackwood. For 12 straight hours, Kovac pushed her through physical challenges, tactical problems, technical assessments, weapons qualifications, and psychological stress tests. He offered no encouragement, no feedback, no indication of her performance quality. By evening, every muscle in Maya's body screamed for rest. But she maintained her composure, completing each task with focused determination, regardless of fatigue. As the final assessment concluded, Kovac studied her with clinical detachment. "You are not entirely unprepared," he finally acknowledged. The statement delivered as if the admission pained him. "Your self-directed training was not completely ineffective." Coming from him, Maya recognized this as significant praise. "However," he continued, "there are substantial gaps in your tactical knowledge, technical proficiency, and operational experience. We begin addressing these deficiencies at 0500 tomorrow." Dismissed. The days that followed established a punishing rhythm. Maya would arrive before dawn for physical conditioning that pushed the boundaries of human endurance, ruck marshes with increasingly heavy loads, combat swimming in full gear, tactical movement under extreme stress conditions. Mornings focused on technical skills, advanced weapon systems, communications technology, specialized equipment operation. Afternoons centered on tactical training, small unit operations, infiltration techniques, unconventional warfare principles. Evenings were dedicated to scenario-based training that integrated everything she had learned that day. Throughout it all, Kovac remained a merciless taskmaster, identifying every flaw, highlighting every deficiency, demanding perfection in all aspects of performance. Yet beneath his harsh exterior, Maya detected something unexpected, a genuine commitment to her development. 2 weeks into the program, during a rare break between training evolutions, Maya found Kovac reviewing her performance metrics on a tablet. "Your progress is..." He paused, seemingly reluctant to continue, "not inadequate." Maya suppressed a smile at his grudging acknowledgement. "Thank you, Sergeant." "Do not thank me," he replied sharply. "I am simply stating an objective assessment. Your absorption rate for technical information exceeds standard parameters. Your tactical adaptation is acceptable. Your physical development is tracking within expected ranges." He set the tablet aside, fixing her with an intense gaze. "But none of this addresses the fundamental question." "Which is, Sergeant?" "Whether someone without conventional progression through established pathways can develop the operational intuition required for special operations success." Kovac's expression grew distant, as if recalling personal experiences. "Technical skills can be taught. Tactical procedures can be memorized. But the intuitive understanding of complex operational environments, this comes from accumulated experience under real conditions." Maya considered his words carefully before responding. "With respect, Sergeant, I believe intuition can be developed through multiple pathways. The critical element isn't the specific experiences, but the cognitive processing of those experiences." Kovac raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Operational intuition is pattern recognition accelerated to the point it appears instinctive," Maya said. "Those patterns can be absorbed through diverse experiences if the individual has developed advanced observational and analytical capabilities." For the first time, Kovac seemed genuinely interested in her perspective, rather than simply evaluating her performance. "You believe your self-directed training has developed these capabilities?" "I believe it created the foundation," Maya clarified. "What I'm learning here is providing the context and application framework." Kovac studied her for a long moment before nodding slightly. "An interesting theory. We shall see if it proves valid in practice." As the weeks progressed, Maya's training expanded to include integration with specialized instructors from various operational disciplines. She learned advanced marksmanship from a former sniper instructor, tactical medicine from a special operations combat medic, technical surveillance countermeasures from an intelligence specialist. Each brought unique expertise and, inevitably, initial skepticism about her accelerated development program. Yet as they worked with her, that skepticism typically evolved into grudging respect. Maya's combination of meticulous preparation, exceptional absorption rate, and unwavering determination consistently impressed even the most experienced operators. One instructor, a combat diver with 20 years of experience, summarized the sentiment after a particularly demanding underwater operations session. "I don't know if this accelerated program makes sense as a general concept, but for this specific individual, it's working." 6 weeks into Phase 1, Dr. Matthews conducted a comprehensive psychological assessment. Maya sat across from the stern psychologist in a small interview room, having just completed a battery of cognitive and personality tests. "Your metrics are fascinating, Private Chen," Matthews remarked, studying the results. "Your stress resilience scores are among the highest I've ever recorded. Your cognitive flexibility under pressure exceeds even experienced operators. Your decision-making processes remain remarkably consistent, regardless of physical fatigue or psychological pressure." Maya waited, sensing there was more coming. "What I can't determine," Matthews continued, looking up from her notes, "is how you develop these traits without the conventional experiences that typically forge them." "May I speak candidly, Doctor?" Maya asked. Matthews nodded. "The conventional pathway assumes that certain capabilities can only be developed through structured, institutionally approved experiences," Maya said. "But that assumption undervalues the human capacity for self-directed development under self-imposed challenges. You're suggesting that your self-created training regimen somehow replicated the psychological stressors of actual combat or high-risk operations. Matthews sounded skeptical. Not replicated, Maya clarified. But it created analogous development. Pathways. The human mind responds to perceived challenges, not just objectively measured ones. I designed training scenarios that my mind and body experienced as genuinely challenging, even if they lacked the external validation of institutional approval. Matthews leaned back, considering this perspective. Most people require external structures to push beyond their perceived limitations. You're claiming you can impose those structures internally with equal effectiveness. Not equal, Maya acknowledged. Different but complementary. The conventional pathway develops certain capabilities more efficiently. Self-directed development fosters others. The optimal approach would integrate both, which is precisely what this program attempts to do, Matthews noted, something like respect showing in her expression for the first time. Perhaps you understand its purpose better than some of its designers. The conversation marked a turning point in Maya's relationship with the psychologist. In subsequent sessions, Matthews shifted from skeptical evaluator to engaged collaborator, genuinely curious about the mental frameworks Maya had developed through her unconventional preparation. As Phase 1 reached its midpoint, General Williams requested a progress briefing. Maya stood before the same group that had welcomed her to Fort Bragg, now delivering a comprehensive report on her development trajectory. The technical skills acquisition is proceeding at 143% of projected rate, she explained, indicating the relevant metrics on the display screen. Tactical proficiency development is tracking at 127% of baseline expectations. Physical conditioning has reached 92% of established special operations standards, with continued improvement anticipated. The officers exchanged glances, clearly impressed despite their initial skepticism. Master Sergeant Kovac reports that integration with specialized training cadre has been successful across all operational disciplines, Maya continued. Areas requiring additional focus include advanced communication systems operation and complex breaching techniques. As she concluded her briefing, General Williams leaned forward. Impressive progress, Private. But metrics tell only part of the story. What's your personal assessment of your readiness for Phase 2 integration with operational teams? Maya considered the question carefully. I believe my technical and tactical development is on track to meet Phase 2 requirements, sir. The greater challenge will be integration with established teams who may resist working with a non-traditionally developed operator. Williams nodded, appreciating her candor. That's an accurate assessment. The human dimension often presents greater obstacles than technical challenges. After the briefing, Colonel Hayden approached Maya privately. You've surprised a lot of people, Chen, myself included. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, he cautioned. Phase 2 will test more than your individual capabilities. It will test your ability to function as part of a team that may not want you there. Technical proficiency won't matter if you can't establish trust and credibility with operators who've come through conventional pathways. I understand, sir. Hayden studied her for a moment. You know, I was one of the strongest opponents of this program when it was first proposed. I still believe in many ways that there are no shortcuts to developing special operators. This doesn't feel like a shortcut, sir, Maya replied with respectful honesty. If anything, it's a more demanding path. Hayden smiled. Slightly, fair point. What I'm coming to understand is that it's not about shortcuts versus long routes. It's about recognizing that different individuals may require different developmental pathways to reach the same destination, the conversation. With Hayden reflected a gradual shift in institutional perspective that Maya noticed as Phase 1 progressed. Initial resistance began giving way to cautious curiosity as her performance consistently exceeded expectations. Staff who had previously avoided interaction now engaged with genuine interest in her unconventional background. During the final weeks of Phase 1, training intensified further as Kovac pushed Maya to integrate all she had learned into cohesive operational capabilities. Scenario-based exercises grew increasingly complex, often running continuously for 72 hours or more, with minimal rest periods. The physical and mental demands were extreme, designed to identify any weaknesses before Phase 2 began. On the final day of Phase 1, Kovac administered a comprehensive evaluation that replicated the assessment from her first day, the same challenges, the same standards, the same unforgiving scrutiny. This time, however, Maya completed each task with confidence born of intensive training and hard-earned competence. As the evaluation concluded, Kovac reviewed the results on his tablet. For several minutes, he said nothing, scrolling through the data with his usual impassive expression. Finally, he looked up. "When you arrived," he began, his voice uncharacteristically reflective, "I believed this program was a political experiment doomed to failure. I expected to document the inevitable shortcomings of attempting to accelerate special operations development." He set the tablet aside, meeting Maya's gaze directly. "I was wrong." The simple admission, coming from someone of Kovac's experience and initial skepticism, carried profound significance. "Your performance metrics now match or exceed those of operators with years of conventional development," he continued. "More importantly, you have demonstrated the adaptive thinking and operational intuition that cannot be taught through standard instruction." Maya maintained her professional composure, though the validation from someone she had come to deeply respect meant more than she could express. "Phase 2 will present different challenges," Kovac warned. "The technical and tactical foundations you have built will be tested in team environments where interpersonal dynamics often matter more than individual capabilities. Not everyone will welcome your presence or acknowledge your competence regardless of demonstrated performance." "I understand, Sergeant." "Of course you do," he replied with unexpected warmth. "You have understood from the beginning. That is perhaps your most remarkable quality, not your technical absorption rate or physical resilience, but your clear-eyed recognition of the human barriers you face and your determined navigation around them." He extended his hand, a gesture of professional respect she had not anticipated. "Good luck in Phase 2, Private Chen. You have earned your place in the next stage of this program." As Maya prepared for the transition to Phase 2, she received an unexpected visitor to her. Quarters Lieutenant Dawson from Fort Blackwood, now wearing the insignia of the Special Operations Support Group. "Lieutenant," Maya greeted her, surprised but pleased. "I didn't know you were at Fort Bragg." "Recent transfer," Dawson explained with a smile. "Though I suspect General Williams had something to do with the timing. He seems to think I might be helpful during your Phase 2 integration." "Will you be part of the program?" "Liaison between the development team and the operational units you'll be joining," Dawson clarified. "Speaking of which, I have news you should be prepared for." Maya raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Your first Phase 2 assignment will be with Echo Team," Dawson said. Led by none other than Master Sergeant Jackson from Razor Team, Maya processed this information with careful neutrality. "Interesting choice. Deliberate choice," Dawson corrected. "Williams wants to place you with someone who has already seen your capabilities firsthand, but who maintains a traditionally skeptical perspective. Jackson fits that profile perfectly." "He does," Maya agreed. "And it's a logical approach. If I can integrate successfully with Echo Team under Jackson's leadership, it strengthens the program's validity." Dawson shook her head slightly, smiling. "That's what impresses me most about you, Chen. Most people would focus on the personal challenge or potential unfairness. You immediately see the strategic purpose and embrace it." "The mission matters more than individual comfort," Maya replied simply. "That's true regardless of which development pathway someone follows." As Phase 1 officially concluded, Maya found herself standing once again in General Williams' office for her final assessment before transitioning to operational integration. Phase 1 complete, performance exceeding all established metrics, Williams summarized, reviewing her file. Master Sergeant Kovac reports that you have achieved technical and tactical proficiency comparable to operators with significantly more conventional experience. He closed the file, studying her with analytical precision. The question now becomes whether that proficiency translates to effective integration with established operational teams. Phase 2 will answer that question. I'm ready, sir, Maya stated with quiet confidence. I believe you are, Williams replied, surprising her with his direct endorsement. But readiness isn't the only factor. You will be entering environments where your very presence challenges deeply held beliefs about how special operators should be developed. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the training grounds where teams of operators conducted their daily exercises. Some of the resistance you'll encounter will be reasonable, legitimate questions about whether accelerated development can truly replace years of progressive field experience. Other resistance will be purely defensive protection of established systems, simply because they are established. Williams turned back to face her. Your challenge is to distinguish between the two and respond appropriately. Learn from legitimate criticism, disregard defensive opposition. Continue demonstrating through performance rather than argument that alternative development pathways can produce qualified operators. Understood, sir. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. You'll report to Echo Team at 0700. Williams extended his hand. Good luck, Private Chen. More than just your future rides on your performance. You're testing a concept that could fundamentally change how we identify and develop talent for our most critical missions. As Maya left the office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From a small farming community in Ohio to the threshold of integration with elite special operations teams, a path that conventional wisdom had insisted was impossible for someone with her background. Yet here she stood, 14 weeks of accelerated development behind her, having proven that alternative pathways could indeed develop the capabilities required for special operations. The next challenge would test whether those capabilities could function effectively within established team structures, whether technical and tactical proficiency could translate to operational integration. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new skeptics, new barriers to overcome. But tonight, Maya allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Not because she had proven others wrong, but because she had proven that the limitations we accept often exist primarily in our minds rather than in reality. The real test was just beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.